And I think all of us have these monumental things that happen to us, and they really are crossroads. They're pivotal moments. And the beauty is that if you don't say yes in that pivotal moment to change, it will probably come back around again. You just don't know how long it's going to take to come back around again, but it probably will. So like if you've had that pivotal moment and you didn't say yes, I don't want you to be like, oh, I missed the boat forever. It'll probably, maybe it's coming back around right now as you're listening.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. This is Audley Stevenson, and we're back for another edition of hands down the most audacious podcast you'll find on the internet. I guarantee you can scour and search. You will not find one more audacious than this one. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you here as always for being here and joining us as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting that bell, ding, 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 and there you go. You're connected to all good things audacious related. Now, on this episode, you're going to hear a story about how taking a leap of faith led to all sorts of wonderful and life-changing events. And the story starts with Martha Krejci and how she made the decision to leave her comfortable corporate job and launch her own home-based business. Well, that ended up being one of the best decisions that she ever made. And if you look at, the success of her business, she made $1 million in her first 6 months. But the part about the story that I love the most is the fact that she's taken all of her learnings and using those to helping to empower others and teaching them how to do the very same thing, which is so awesome. She's the author of the book, The Home-Based Revolution, which expands on her teachings and her learnings. And it's great. And, I think it was awesome that certainly Martha took that leap, and it was great to have her. She's a delight to talk to, great energy, a lot of fun. Funny enough, this was actually the second time we had Martha on the podcast. Those digital gremlins got in the way and tried to tear us apart and not have us have the audacious conversation that we did. But we circled back and we made it happen. It was absolutely wonderful. Martha and I are homies, and we just hang out and have a good time. And I'm absolutely certain that all of you will take some great lessons from a great chat. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Martha Krejci. Enjoy. I'm going to say join me again on the Audacious Living Podcast. We tried to do it before. Technical difficulties got the best of us, but I'm so glad to be sitting down and chatting with you again. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This is going to be so much fun.
Yes. I believe that, so first off, this podcast, we spend a lot of time talking about the importance of being bold and audacious. And, we've all got powerful stories that are not only motivate ourselves, that can impact and inspire other people. And certainly, looking into your story and the path that you're on and what you're doing to inspire and help and motivate other home-based businesses to get off the ground, I think is a great fit. But let's start kind of at the beginning, if you don't mind, and sort of what got you to where you are now. There's always that, call it the origin story, if you will. What does yours look like, Martha?
Oh man, my origin story is from corporate America, right? So I was first of all, I worked for 14 or 15 years in the hospitality industry. So I was a waitress and a bartender for that long, which to everybody that is in that world, God bless you. It is like boot camp for really building an excellent business later on in the future, because nobody anticipates needs like somebody that has to handle people that are hangry. There's just nobody that can do it quite as well as we can. I'm just saying. So if you're in that industry and you're like, what am I going to do with my life? Think about becoming an entrepreneur, because nobody's as good as you at it. So
I'm sorry. I love the line, and I hate to cut you so early, but the line about anticipating needs, because that really, Martha, that really is a skill, and a skill that serves you not in just that industry, but in life, especially when you get into your own home-based business or business in general. Anticipating needs to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I always, whenever I'm talking to my people, I always say, like, I am paying attention to the pulse. I'm paying attention to the pulse of what's going on in my community. Where are they at? Where do they need triage? Right? What are the things that they need support in right now? Like if they are like sinking and they need to be pulled onto a boat, where is that? What does that show up as in their life? So we can go put a bandage on that. We can go fix that for them, because nobody cares about what you can do for them in the future if you can't get them in the boat to begin with.
Gotcha. Love it. I love it.
Yeah. And so I started in hospitality, 14, 15 years. And then I got what I called at that point, my big girl job. And that was at GoDaddy. And so I worked at GoDaddy for a little over 5 years. I moved into leadership, and I went, I started at the very bottom, just being on the phones in a support role. And then I moved into leadership. And those 5 years, I grew immensely. And only part of my growth was actually the growth from the training in the company and learning to support their products and things like that. Most of my actual growth came from the conversations that I was having with business owners on the phone, because I would talk to thousands, right, of business owners. And so I would hear their problems. I would hear what they're working through. I would hear what was really stumbling blocks for them. And only a minute amount of those problems could be solved with products that GoDaddy had. And so the rest of the time, I'm just thinking, like, I'm on the phone with this human being that really needs support in this thing. And I can't really support it here. And so that was what really was, and now I look back on it and can see it, it was really starting to lay the foundation for my love of business owners and my always trying to keep an eye out for their safety and to show them how to be able to do the next level thing. And that's where I eventually one day, so that was already starting to churn. You always, you have these things that just start creating you and molding you, right? And my actual pivot moment was one day I was sitting in my office. It was like my carpeted cubicle. Everybody's familiar with this, right? It smelled like the 60s. Yeah. You're really just thinking, like, should I be breathing this in, this stuff that is coming out of this carpet? But anyway, I had all my little quotes around me that got me through the day, my pictures of my family and everything. And my phone went off, and it was my husband, and he was sending me a video. And you know how you can just see a sort of like a still from the video?
Thumbnail, yep.
Yeah, thumbnail. And you're like, yeah, there's a word for that. So
just help me. I mean, you're the digital strategist, and I gave you verbiage. And that's awesome. I'm having a great day.
Yeah, you are. I'm having a great day with you. So the thumbnail came up, and I saw it, and it was my daughter on her feet, and that hadn't happened before, unassisted, Right. And I was like, oh my word. And I couldn't push play because you can't be on your phone on the floor, And so I had to go in the bathroom to watch it, which is silly. But I went to the bathroom and I watched this video of my daughter taking her very first like clumpy steps. Her eyes were like, ah. And she was so excited, right? And I was so excited for her. And in that very moment, it was like, it went, how you have these emotions, and sometimes you can get so happy, and then the other side to that coin is like crushing.
Right.
And that's where I was just so beyond elated for her. But then like on the other side of that coin was the realization that I wasn't there.
Mm.
It was the realization that she wasn't walking to me.
Right.
And while like she's not going to remember that she wasn't walking to me, I carry that with me. As a mom, I carry that with me. And when I as I experienced that, the thing that just kept going through my head was not right or wrong, but are you okay with this? Because
Right.
it's going to keep happening, right?
Right.
And I think all of us have these monumental things that happen to us, and they really are crossroads. They're pivotal moments. And the beauty is that if you don't say yes in that pivotal moment to change, it will probably come back around again. You just don't know how long it's going to take to come back around again, but it probably will. So like if you've had that pivotal moment and you didn't say yes, I don't want you to be like, oh, I missed the boat forever. It'll probably,
right.
Maybe it's coming back around right now as you're listening.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say yes now, And so
and sometimes those pivotal moments, they might be quiet, and other times they'll come back louder, right, and more prevalent. And you're like, oh, this is what you're trying to tell me, right? And that's we talk about that universe giving us messages, and so it starts off as a whisper, and it gets louder and louder and louder. So you're right, it does come back around.
Absolutely. This was screaming in my face loud. I went back to sit because I didn't have time to take off, or else I would have gone home. I'm a mom, and so you don't have time to take off because every time they give you more time, you use it because you're a mom, and that's what happens. And so I had to go sit back in my chair, or else I would get fired. I couldn't leave to go with my daughter. And that's where the screaming, when I say it was screaming at me, it was a perfect storm. Right. It was like, this thing is going to happen. Also, you can't do a thing about it. Now what? What choice are you going to make now? Right.
Right.
And so the choice that I made was to sit my butt in my chair for that moment. But as I was sitting my butt in my chair until the end of the day, I was coming up with ways to be able to leave, to be able to quit my job. And then I came up with one. And on my way home to tell my husband I was going to quit my job, there were things that were going through my mind. So I think all of us experience this. Whenever you know that you're about to have an argument with your significant other, I think we all do this. We start to set the stage for ourselves, right? And we give ourselves these different, okay, well, if they say this, I'm going to say this.
What if scenarios, right?
Yeah. And if they say this, then I'm going to say this.
Right.
Okay. If they say this, then I'm going to say this. Like it's, you work all of that out. And that was what my ride home was like. Right. And so I had it all figured out. Like I just knew where I was going to go. So I take a deep breath, pull in the driveway. All right. Grab my stuff, go in the house, walk up the stairs, put my purse and my keys on the counter. Then I look at my husband and I say, I'm going to quit my job. Here's the thing is I thought that he was going to say that I was a crazy person. I thought he was going to start yelling at me. I thought that he was just going to totally lose his mind, because here's the deal. He is like the guy that holds the string to my balloon, so to speak. So I'm like the visionary. And he's like, okay, but this and this and this and this. How are we going to pay the bills? Like we all need those, that's why we attract to each other, is because I feel like God's like, okay, so you're awesome. You're a visionary, but you also need somebody to keep you under control. So let me give you this other person. Right. And so, I suspected he was going to just lose his mind or hyperventilate, pass out. I don't know. Something was going to happen. Something dramatic was going to happen. Right. And then he said this. Here's what he said. He said, Martha, if you don't do this, you're not only doing yourself, but everybody else around you a disservice.
Wow. Wasn't expecting that.
No. I was like, but I spent 30 minutes preparing for other things. Well, I could have been doing something else.
All the rebuttals ready. What do you mean?
I was ready. And for the first time in my life, I was prepared and ready for a conversation, and it didn't happen. And then I was just like, what just came out of this man's face? Like, this is not what because if you were to look at my life on paper, it was a real dumb move to just say, I'm going to quit my job. I was the sole breadwinner of my family. Right. Wow. I held the insurance on my family. We had already brought my husband home from work because he hated his job, and we brought him home from work, which is why he was taking the video of our girl taking her first steps. Right. And his parents had just moved in with us. Because his dad had lost his job and he was in his 70s, and you don't go look for a new job in your 70s. And so we moved them in with us. We had just bought a really expensive new house. So we had this expensive mortgage. So all of that on paper seems like not a great time for Martha to just quit her job, right?
Especially when you look at it, and not to suggest that you were quitting on a whim, but certainly it was a very, very quick decision that was made, not a lot of time for processing. So again, what was on paper didn't line up with the realities that you were facing.
Exactly. Yeah. It was, what is going on here? I'm sorry. I am seeing myself okay. So sorry.
I had the button issue, so we're good now. We're good.
Yeah, right. This is so fun. This is fun. I'm having fun with you. So yeah, that's what I did, and that's what he said to me. And then the rest is us making it so. The rest is us making it happen. And so the very first thing that I did was I went and I got a desk. I thought I needed a desk as a business owner. Turns out now I work on the couch, but I thought I needed a desk. And so we went and got a desk and I put it together. And that's how I know I shouldn't put things together. It was one of the drawers was upside down. The other one didn't open at all. But anyway, it was a flat surface on top that I got to work on. It was so bad. And then we just started bobbing and weaving. So right out of the gate, I started an agency. An SEO agency. So I'm really, really naturally good at SEO. Like, I understand algorithms, especially Google's algorithms, before they even, mention that there's been an algorithmic change. I can already sense and notice the change that happened and be able to take flight into my own stuff. And so then I, started working with other business owners and helping them with that. So I started with an agency, and we've kind of just bobbed and weaved into where we are right now. But that's my origin story, was just figuratively jumping out the window and just saying no more. Like, I choose to have something different. And now let's see what that looks like. And let's get creative and let's get curious.
I love, so a couple things I touch on that I love. I love the part. I want to go back a little bit, talking about, so the things you've done in the past. So we referenced already your time in the hospitality industry and that ability to predict needs. And then with GoDaddy, working with business owners. And so you already were in that mindset, that space to be able to problem solve and figure out. And I love the fact that you pointed out that product wasn't always the answer. So you sort of take, and so the part about this I love is when and it happens to all of us, right, Martha? When we get to a point, we stop and look back at kind of all the things that we've done, and you can literally connect the dots. And when you connect the dots, you're like, here I am. Now this makes sense.
Yes. And how there's just such a divine plan to things. And my favorite thing to remind new entrepreneurs of is that oftentimes, like, I don't even know one single person who's massively successful that got there the way they thought they were going to get there. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, so often we have this idea of what our success is going to look like. Make sure that you're not married to that. Make sure you're married to success, but not to what it looks like and how you get there, because that's the part that could look very different than what you think.
Well, and you touched on the fact that there's been bobbing and weaving and pivoting.
Yeah.
Like you had to do that to get to where you are. And so, right. So you start plan A, this is what it is. And oftentimes, if we stay married to that, it ends up being to our detriment. And that's why the
Absolutely.
need to bob and weave, which you did. Can you sort of talk about what that looked like when as you're pivoting? What like, give me an example of how you bobbed and weaved.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to tell you. So, well, I started off with the agency,
Yes.
and the agency was around for a while. It started off just as SEO, and then it went into other needs. So we were hearing of other needs that they had. And then we were like, okay, that is something we can actually fulfill and make sense to us in our delivery method. It makes sense that it could be something that we do. We didn't go crazy. You don't want to, as clients are saying, well, I want this and I want this and I want this. You don't want to go crazy saying, oh, well, I could do all of that. Cause then
Right.
you can't be great at one thing, you know, but, we were able to add some other things to that made sense. So we did SEO already on their websites. Well,
Yep.
all right. So you need a new website. Cool. Well, we can do that and then already add some SEO to it. That makes sense. And then we could do some social media because I was already good at social media anyway. So we kind of worked with those three things for a bit. And then we created bundles out of that stuff. And really our first actual big pivot was moving from the agency model into the teaching model. And so the reason why we had that pivot was because I had people coming to me that were asking me to, they wanted my agency to do work for them, but they couldn't afford us to do the work for them, right? And I couldn't really lower the prices because it costs a certain amount. When you have other human beings doing work for you, you really do have dollars in there that you got to watch your margins. And so I couldn't just, as much as I'm a heart-centered person, I can't, it's a for-profit business.
Exactly.
I needed to
You're in it for a
maintain
reason.
that.
I get it.
Yeah, right. And so it broke my heart whenever I had them come to me saying that they needed help, because I would hear their whole story. I would hear their, suite of services. And I thought, man, you guys are really doing good things in the world, but they couldn't afford us. And so that was where my very first pivot came in, where I wanted to teach them how to do all of the stuff that I do. I wanted to teach them how to be able to do it, because everything costs one of two things, right? Time or money. So if you don't have the money to spend on it, make sure you have the time. So if you have some time to invest in it, I can show you how to do it, right? And so that was where we pivoted into an education space. Now we still had some clients, and I still have clients, from that business actually, but that's been years ago, but I still do have some. And then, so we moved from that over into the teaching method. And so then I started teaching people, and that was the very first pivot. After that, then we pivoted even more into the teaching, but we moved into, and this is when COVID started. My husband and I were watching the news, because that's what everybody did at that point, right? I don't know about much anymore, but yeah, right. We were all just kind of sitting around like, what the heck is going on right now? Right. And this was past the 2 weeks to flatten the curve point. I think we were like 3 or 4 weeks in, where we're all kind of looking at each other like,
what curve?
Yeah. Like, remember, it was just such a weird, it was almost like you could feel it in the air. There was such a weird eeriness to that time, because we were all just like, what's happening? And Mike and I are watching the news, and we're seeing families losing their jobs. Like, corporations were doing layoffs like crazy, right? And there was just all of this crazy stuff happening. And Mike and I had already developed, we live from many income streams, and we work them all from home, and they all weave together, and we do it in about 5 to 10 hours a week. And so we were looking at each other at that point in time, and we weren't yet teaching this, But we were like, we need to show people how to do what we're doing.
Wow.
Because there's like, when you see a mom and a dad both get laid off, and there's no chance of rehiring anywhere right now because the world is so weird, your heart just breaks. And we were just looked at each other and we were like, you think of their kids, you think of their family, you're like, how are they going to feed themselves? Like, we don't know what's happening and we don't know how long this is going to happen. And so we got boots on the ground, ready to go, hurried up and created curriculum around what we do. And that was our next pivot. And that has blessed us in more ways than I can even say, like, not even just financially, like blesses us daily to be able to serve families. And that's where we sit right now, is we serve families.
I so love the story around that pivot, because of the reasoning for it. It wasn't seen as an opportunity to create this brand new stream of revenue or to make money. Obviously, that's part of it, but that wasn't the goal going in. It was to really legitimately help. And the way you help, which Martha, I think is so beautiful, because when you can empower people, it's, to do it for themselves, which is exactly what you're doing. That's such an amazing thing. And so to know that you made that kind of shift because you wanted to be able to help others by empowering themselves, that's phenomenal. That's a part of what I absolutely love about that, and it's no wonder why you're richly blessed beyond that. And again, I'm glad you pointed out that it wasn't just financially, but other things have come out of that. So really, I mean, that's fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, it's just. I never knew life could be like this. I knew what success looked like.
Sure.
What outward people, what people on the outside would look at as success, like money and da da da. But I never knew what this part of life could look like, where you're so intrinsically weaved into the fabric of people's families and their success. Like, it's something that's just on a whole nother level. It's amazing.
Right. No, that's so awesome. And again, really, I mean, I can sincerely commend you for you and Mike for what you've done and how you help people weather the storm, because the times are trying for everyone, right? We're going through the exact same thing at the exact same time, and no one had answers, but we were seeing things crumble around us. And so to be able to help in your way, again, it's certainly to be commended. So I love that story. I wonder if you can talk about, sort of in general sense, trial and error, failing, if you will. I would imagine, you're going to experience highs and lows in any business. You're going to have successes. You're going to have failures. I don't know if failures is a word I would use, because you can learn from that and turn those unfortunate situations into positives. But I wonder if you can sort of talk about that, because the importance of trying, right? I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah. I love messing things up. And the reason I love messing things up is because it gives me my handbook for how to do it right, and it's like we learn so much more through when it didn't work,
right,
than when it does work. Because even if I were to teach something, if it just worked for me right away, the very first time that I tried to do something, my teaching on that topic is going to be very one-dimensional.
Correct.
It's going to say like, okay, well, do this, do that, do this, do that, wash, rinse, repeat. And that's fine as a system. But when you can't tell people, watch out for this, watch out for this part. I had this happen to me. So if you move into this space, make sure that you watch out for this.
Yes.
That's
where the value is. That's where the true value is, Martha. It really is.
Yes, it gives you, it's the difference between like a coloring sheet of paper and something that a 3D machine prints out, and that you make that into like a whole thing. It's a dimensional way to be able to educate someone that then gives them cellular knowledge of where they're moving into, instead of this topical knowledge. Because here's the thing is, when we just work from a space of topical knowledge of something. You don't know the whys, the ifs, the ands. You don't know anything contextually about it, other than you're just doing this thing, which really leaves you in a space that I would be scared to only know topical knowledge about something and to try to build it out, because there's so many things around the corners, which will then put anybody in paralysis, because you know that there should be something scary there.
Right. Well, even from the standpoint of being able to teach people, you teach people and they'll say, okay, and they'll give you well, what if this happens? What you're providing is theoretical, because you don't know. You haven't experienced it. You've got no idea if it really works. And really, the most you can say is, this should work.
Yes.
But you don't know, right? And I think when we talk about teaching and empowering and strengthening people, you're kind of sort of doing a bit of an injustice if you can't take them all the way through the process.
Amen. I love that you said that it's theoretical, because if we had a nickel for every internet marketing guru out there that says, here's how you do this, and here's how you do this. And really, there's a lot of them. And here's where I throw stones. This is the part where I throw stones a little bit. This is where everybody learns from a couple of people. And those couple of people were really about 30, 40 years ago, maybe even 50 years ago. And then they kind of rehash the tactics and whatever. But it's all theoretical, because they haven't done it themselves. They're just saying, this is how you do it, because this is how somebody said to do it 40, 50 years ago. And then they've sort of just rehashed that. And it's the scariest thing. It's why I won't even do summits. By the way,
send me your $9.99 to this, whatever, right?
There it is. It's why I won't even be on summits anymore. Because there was a time where I was on like a bunch of, digital marketing summits, social media summits, and And really, those summits exist. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and let's just bring some transparency to the world here. Those summits exist for people to have access to other people's email lists. Okay. And essentially, they're putting all of these people together that they're all talking about the same stuff. And I can't exist even in those summits, because I'm not going to invite my people to a place where there's potentially charlatans talking about just these things, but they may talk about it really well and then confuse my people. And so anyway, I just I had to go into my throwing stones thing for a minute, because it exists. It's like it's a weird space. It's a weird space.
Well, I'll tell you something else too. Oftentimes, in those summits, when people are gathered, the real value that comes out of that is the people that you can get to interact with and share with. Not so much what these people in front of you are standing. Not that, some may have value there, but it's those around in the group where, you'll ask a question or meet someone who's going through a similar problem, and you didn't need that expert to tell you that, because the people are right with you.
Yes. So it's the networking of it. Yeah. I love it. Check out the value on the other side. Yeah, maybe I'll go to summits, but I won't speak at summits.
That's right. There we go. There you go. No, I get it. But yeah, no, again, I thought that the conversation around trial and error is an important one, and I love the fact that we sort of talked about the theoretical versus the practical, because it's the practical that makes a true difference. And as I said before, if you're going to really teach something to someone, you really need to teach them and not just show them or talk. You've got to really teach them. And so I love the fact that that's part of what you do as well.
Well, what we're doing, we're even changing our own game so far as that's concerned. And we're breaking people up we're breaking our students up via personality style. And so and really learning style. And so we're even creating small groups. And I suggest this for everybody on the planet. I think this is just great. We're breaking them up into small groups with a leader of the group also having their same learning style. And so, like we have little small coaches to help the different groups out or to lead the groups. And so the way that I deliver a module to somebody who's the same personality as me is going to be very easy, right? We're going to be quick with it. I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out. We're going to move on with our day. No fluff. There's another personality style that really values knowledge, and they value statistics and data, and they want all of the data, the info,
Yes.
And for them, I will still teach the thing, but I'll give them all of the stats, all of the data, the resources. Here's where it came from. Here's where that source came from. The things I know they need to know, or else it leaves a question mark in their minds and they cannot move forward, right? And so I know the different stall out points for the different personality styles. And so I'm delivering directly to them in that capacity. Like, it's just to really be able to... let me start my sentence over again. A lot of times as course creators or program creators, we teach what we know based on how we learned what we know. And I think to be very effective, we need to make sure that we're teaching what we know in the way that our people need to hear it in order for true transformation to happen for them. And that always needs to be our focus. And so if you can run everything through that filter, all of a sudden you become amazing at what you do.
Well, it's a totality of learning and teaching, if you will, right? Like it's not just one aspect or one element. You're providing the whole big thing, which again, at the end user, the end receiver, if you will, that's where the value is. You need to get it all, I think.
Yep. Agreed.
Oh, amazing. Oh, so amazing. I've heard, in fact, when we were on the last time, like I said before, we tried this before, it didn't work out. But one of the things that we talked about the last time, I absolutely wanted to ensure that we touched on again today, was the community that you're building, right? Through your network of home-based businesses, mothers, all sorts of individuals, stay-at-home moms and running their business, and all sorts of individuals. I wonder if you could talk about the strength of that community and the benefits that you're seeing that coming out of it.
Yeah. Community is everything. It's what we're all starving for right now. We're starving to link arms with somebody. We're starving for community. That's what we're starving for. And so what we're doing right now is we've got a community of, mine's called Families Creating Legacies. And so we have a bunch of families coming in there that are, maybe that working their full-time job right now, but their goal is to be able to work from home. Well, what we focus on is being able to bring the family back together again.
Right.
That's really important to us because we see the trajectory of where the world is going. And it's really the fallout from what happened 40 years ago is what we're seeing, the fallout today of what happened 40 years ago, as the world started changing 40 years ago, now we're starting to see the residual effects of that. And so what I mean when I say that is, if we're just now starting to see the effects of 40 years ago, we need to really get serious about changing that trajectory if we want it to change at all, because it's going to a scary place. Whenever we look at, here we go. I'm not going to do this right now. When we look at, when we look at the divorce rate, but whenever we look at kids taking their lives, when we look at stuff like that, it gets to be a little bit overwhelming. And if we truly look at that for what it is, and we break it down, my belief and my husband's belief is that if we can get the family put back together again, we're probably going to thwart what's going on right now. We're probably going to be able to fix this curve that's happening right now, just simply by being around, being present, and having an awareness that we don't have right now about who these little humans are that we're raising. right? And letting these little humans be seen and heard for who they are, and letting them feel safe and secure with mom and dad around. And that's my belief. And so when we look at that and then we say, okay, well, how do we fix that? I mean, it's great to say, rah, we need to fix this, but nothing matters if we don't have a system by which to do it.
Something. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so Mike and I were like, okay, well, if we can teach mom and dad, what we're teaching them, if we can teach them how to be able to create income from home, not saying that everybody's going to be multimillionaires. Can you scale? Sure. But not saying that that's even necessary. Let's just make what you're already making at work from home so you can be around your kids. Right. And so, if we're able to teach parents how to be able to make income from home, well, then now we can start working against this thing. And then we can start, actually throwing rocks at that thing. And so that's what we're doing in our group. That's the community that we're creating, is parents that are making that choice, is parents that are saying, okay, so I'm not saying I have it all together. I'm not saying that I know what I'm doing. And I'm not saying that I even know at all what I want to do from home to create income. All I'm saying is I'm in. I want to do this. I want this future that you're talking about, right? And that is the community that we're creating. And so here's the thing, is we have moms, dads, kids. I had a student, her son, I think he's 3. He might be 4 now. He sent a video, or he asked his mom to record him on video so he could put this in the group, or so she could. And the video was just, thank you, Martha, 4-year-old. And they come on to the momentum calls and they're like, hi, like, it's just so fun. But you have all of these families. And here's the thing, is they are not judgmental of each other. They are not bullies to each other. They are supporting each other. They are lifting each other up. They are collaborating with each other. They're linking arms. And there was in a social media post that I did today, I was like, we just need to drop the armor and link arms at this point. Like, this is ours. This is ours to be able to own, right? This world, this culture, this society, it's ours. And so, anyway, that is what we're doing in the group. And it's fantastic. I love being a part of it.
Well, and what you've described in that's the truest sense of community in every sense. It's supporting, being there, collaborating, all of those things. That's what community is. And so when you look at the community that you have, and sort of the purpose, its purpose and why it's formed, and in the sense as we're talking about families and giving families an opportunity to be closer together. I mean, look, it's. I mean, even your own personal story, that was really essentially where it stemmed from, is you wanted to be, right? You wanted to be home. You want to be a part of your daughter and her world. And you talked about sort of the different milestones that come along, and there'll be lots of them. And so to be a part of that, I got no words, Martha. I mean, I can't say it. It's beautiful. It really is.
It is. I agree. Like I said, it's an amazing thing to be a part of. I feel like I'm just riding the wave. It's it's so much bigger than me at this point.
I love it. I should, at the very least, I should touch on your book, Home-Based Revolution, and kind of what made you write that. I kind of get a sense where you're going with it, but I'll let you explain that because it's a revolution. Everyone wants to be working from home. I wonder if you can sort of touch on that and what made you write the book.
Yeah. I didn't know I was going to write a book. I had somebody ask me to write it, so I wrote it, and I was like, I'm not an author, and now I've got 4 books. But Home-Based Revolution it's a high level view of what I teach people. So I have a program also called Home-Based Revolution, but this is like a high level view of what it looks like to be able to create income from home, and it shares my story in it. It also has the tactics in it, with actual, like, you could sink your teeth into the things, right? And do them, from the book. It's not just ambiguous.
Right.
And then there's also stories of students of mine that are doing the thing. And so you're able to see an accessibility of realizing that, there was this 60-year-old lady that's doing it. And there's a woman that was a teacher. There's a lady that brought her husband home from work, and there is a
Right.
nurse that's now found income outside of nursing, but still gets to support people. And it's just really understanding all angles of how we can really create income from home. So that's the home-based revolution side of things.
I love it, the stories. I think that's the part that I grabbed to, because you give people an opportunity to see themselves through stories, and also to see what's possible, right? I've always been a big proponent of sharing our stories, because of how we can help other people, and how you can inspire and motivate and allow people to see what's possible. So I think I love that you touched on that, and you included those stories in addition to your own. So that's a great job there, Martha.
Yeah, thank you. I love that they shared them.
Very cool. Martha, this is, I think we had a better time chatting this time than we had the first time.
I think so. Well, I think it's because we go way back now. So
we're a long time homies. Of course, we go way back. But I mean, look, I loved it. Thank you for being here again. Thank you for the computer issues that made us come back again to have this conversation. I think it's an important one. For our listeners that wanted to learn more about you, or get caught up with your work, or figure out, hey, how can we do this from home? You inspired us. You've showed us what's possible. Where can we send our listeners?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. My website is withmartha.com. So we make it pretty easy. So WITH and then martha.com. And that's pretty much a hub for everything. So you'll see my social media from there. You'll see different programs and my blog. I would suggest checking out my blog or my YouTube channel, because that's where you'll get a lot of like trainings. And then also I have that group, Families Creating Legacies, on Facebook. And I do a training in there every single week. And there's a backlog of them in the guides section. So just a bunch of free support, free help. I'm just here to get you moving.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. One last thing, Martha, before we go here. If there's that one person that's sitting here listening to our conversation, and obviously they're taking a lot from it, because I certainly have enjoyed what we've talked about today, and they're on that cusp of like, I've got this job and I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not satisfied, I've got I've got a world at home that I want to be a part of. You took that just leap. And you just went. That may not necessarily be for everyone. Everyone may not be able to do that. Mm-hmm. What would you say that individual that's sort of in that contemplation mode and trying to figure that out, what would that look like for them, the next steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So for the next step, if you're not ready to just jump out the window, which I would say probably 90% of people aren't. So you're totally not a weird person for not wanting to do that. I'm a little crazy, but
you're fun, not crazy.
Yeah, thank you. What I would suggest is looking at, first of all, who you want to serve, which is essentially an extension of yourself. So what I always tell people, and this is a bit of a long answer, but I'm just going to try to condense it. What I tell people is to, if you get a piece of paper and you put it long ways and you draw a line on it with a little arrow at the end, because it represents your life and the arrow means that there's more. But once you have that line, then what you do is you put down hash marks on the line representing every time that you felt backed up against a wall, like you needed to figure something out to be able to move forward. You had to figure this thing out. And usually there's a number of them for us, right? And my hash mark let me tell you the rest of it. So once you have your hash marks, then you kind of, you look at all of them and you determine which of them you would like to serve. Okay. And so for my hash marks, the one that I serve is the version of me sitting in the carpeted cubicle, right? That's my person I serve. So when we talk about my origin story, I talk about my hash mark. That's the origin story of the person that I serve right there, right? And so you're going to determine which hash mark you're going to serve, and then think, what do they really need? You have to go back to that place in time. So you have to just get quiet and allow it to come through. But you think of that time when you were there. If you can just think, if you were sitting on the couch staring at the wall at that point in time, if you were to just think, if only I knew X, Y, and Z, then everything would be fine. If only I knew how to then I'm going to be good. That's how you're going to serve your people. That's how you start. Now, once you start serving them, you're going to hear feedback and you're going to keep your finger on the pulse, right? And so you're going to, that's where bobbing and weaving really starts. But to start somewhere is the first point, right? Or else you're just going to, I wish I could, I want to, and it never happens. Right. And so let's start somewhere. So who are you going to serve? How are you going to serve them? And then start committing to how you're going to do that. I would grab my book. It's at marthasbook.com. It will show you, like I said, systematically how to be able to serve those people, and then start going. And you don't have to quit your job immediately. Quit your job when you feel comfortable quitting your job. It's not it. Or if you don't ever want to quit your job and you always want this to just be another basket of eggs, you just don't want the one basket of eggs, but maybe you just want another one, then have this be your other basket. But regardless, just start with knowing who you're serving and how you're going to serve them.
And what I love about the answer, and it wasn't long-winded, so I appreciate that because it was very important. You applied a process to it, right? To make it it wasn't something on a whim, or just, there's a process, a clear that you go through. And the most important thing is that you're allowing people to make decisions when it's right for them, not when this says you've got to do it right now. And so I do appreciate you doing that. Martha, this is awesome. Thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast. So much fun, and wishing you all the best.
Oh man, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again.
Take care.
Back we are here on the podcast, and it was so awesome to have Martha here back with me, I should say, and sharing her incredible story of how taking that leap of faith paid off in such a big way for her and her family. I also think her advice around being clear on who you want to serve before taking that leap was important, because as inspiring as it was to hear what Martha did, that's not necessarily the leap that everyone can or necessarily should make. So being very clear on who or what your why is and move accordingly, again, is so key. And so good advice from Martha, so thank you. When I reflect on my conversation with her, she really left us with lots of great stuff, and I really appreciate Martha for that. But if there's just one thing that I take from my conversation, it would be this. The thought or idea of diving into the unknown or jumping out that proverbial window can be a terrifying thing to do for a lot of people, and with good reason. Uncertainty or not knowing what's coming around the corner can bring about a scary feeling, particularly if you're someone who likes to plan things out. However, having said that, there are some rewards that inherently come along when we embrace the uncertainty and throw ourselves into the unknown. We build up our intuition and learn to trust that feeling in our gut. We become more accepting of the feeling of fear, and we strengthen our resiliency skills in the process. When we take on that uncomfortable leap of faith, we're fully surrendering to all expectations that we hold of others and ourselves, which will allow us to start anew and feel completely free and audacious. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address, and you'll be alerted every time there's brand new content that comes out. Now, We've sadly reached the end of another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, and I have to send out a big shout out to our amazing listeners, the lovers of audaciousness, for their tremendous and ongoing support. It means so much, and I appreciate it, and I say thank you as always. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.